Today's topic, 5 costly blunders that physicians are ruining their HSA with, their health savings account. That's right, we're gonna walk through 5 pretty common errors that we see with individuals missing out on some of the value that can come with an HSA. And you all know, I love a good HSA. I think it's one of the most valuable accounts out there. So in today's video, we're gonna walk through 5 of those costly blunders. We'll also discuss how to fix that or to avoid those costly blunders and continue our journey on why the HSA is one of the best and coolest accounts out there. So stay tuned. All 5 of those are coming up next. All right, first costly blunder, just missing the basics on the HSA. I am shocked by how many clients will actually still send us a note and say, hey, I read that this HSA has good tax benefits. Why aren't we using it? Heck, that could be you, right? You might be Googling this, right? Or YouTubing this, and you find us thinking, why am I not using an HSA? Why am I missing out? Well, the first thing you need is a high deductible health plan that's actually HSA eligible. That's actually really the biggest hurdle here. So not understanding the basics is your first error, or could be your first error. How do you avoid it? Well, make sure you actually have a high deductible health plan that is HSA eligible. On top of that, there are a few other things you want to keep in mind, right? If it's HSA eligible, that's your main win there. Let's go through 2024 contribution limit. If you're watching this in future years, just a little Google search, you'll find the newest numbers there. Here's where we are. For an individual plan, $4,150. That is the most that you can put into your HSA and get a tax deduction. For a family plan, that is a perfect double. It goes to $8,300. If you're watching this age 55 plus, shout out. Also fastest growing demographic on YouTube, an extra 1,000. You can add an extra 1,000 to those numbers. One of the other tricky parts, now again, if your plan is HSA eligible, you're in a good spot. But I will say this is one of the more tricky parts about a high deductible health plan. Not only does it have a minimum annual deductible, but keep an eye on your max out of pocket. If you're thinking like I think, I always say that's really crazy to me, right? They're actually saying that if your max out of pocket is too high, you still can't use an HSA. So there's this range that you need to follow. So keep an eye on that. I won't add those details in there. Again, that's a Google search, but if you're in an HSA eligible plan, you're in a good spot here. Another common error we see here, don't double dip, right? If you're sitting there and you're saying, well, I have a family plan, I want to use the HSA, and I'm going to put in the full $8,300, but then you have a spouse that for some reason or significant other that's not on the family plan, and they say, well, I'm using an HSA eligible plan, I'm going to put in that other the other $4,150. Can't do that. That's double dipping. You got to make sure you're following the rules, whether you're using a family plan or an individual plan. So make sure you understand HSA 101 or the HSA basics to make sure that you're not having any costly blunders mixed in here. Number 2, forgetting to track your medical expenses. I note this one quite a bit, but one of the coolest features of an HSA is that you could have medical bills from many years past. There's actually no limitation on that. And if you can show that your deductions matched up to what you pulled out of your HSA, you can still get all that out tax-free. Now, I would not get carried away here, and I often call it my NyQuil joke, right? I probably am not keeping my $4 receipt for a NyQuil visit to CVS, right? But if I paid out of pocket, I'll give you an example. I just did a blood draw and it was a little bit more cost than I thought, but we're still in our deductible. But that was $500. So we're going to pay that out of pocket. I'm not going to dip into the family HSA. HSA is a long-term account. It's in there, it's invested. I don't want to touch this thing for decades. So that's a good one where I will note that one. I'll put it in my little HSA folder. It'll say $500 for the blood draw stashed away. Because if I ever need to pull money out of the HSA, I can use that receipt, right? I was in HSA eligible plan, paid that out of pocket instead. I had money in my HSA. That's what we're referring there. So keep a folder, maybe a virtual folder of those higher cost items. But number 2 on the list is just tracking that, right? Because if you do need to ever utilize this strategy, this trick in the future, this could be a big tax savings for you, right? So keep an eye on that. Track your receipts, whether this is through a physical file or what I would say probably much easier, a virtual file, and then put away some of those larger expenses that you paid out of pocket. Number 3, the number 3 costly blender, which I would argue this might be the costliest. I think that's a word. Missing the investment opportunities. One of the biggest benefits to HSAs now is that most of them, if not almost all of them at this point, now offer an investment, meaning that you can put away your $8,300 in a given year and then invest that for future use. Now, anytime you invest anything, I don't care if it's your HSA, your Roth IRA, your 401k, 401k, your 403b, your 437b, anything. Investment dollars in your mind should always have a 10-year window. Whenever you put $1 into the stock market, you need to say, I'm probably not touching this money for 10 years, right? That's how you should always be thinking about putting money into the stock market. So if you're going to invest it, you're truly setting up for a longer term usage, right? Now, if you say, well, maybe I'll use some, maybe I will. That's okay. Great. I love it. Keep some in cash then, right? Don't invest all of it. Keep some in cash. And even some of the actual HSA providers now almost force you to keep $1,000 or $2,000 in cash. So number 3 on the list, which again, out of our 5, I think this one has the potential to be the most costly. We did another HSA video. I forget exactly which one it was, but we even did the math, right? Like what if you only put the 8,300, again, that number varies most years, into an account for 10, 15, 20 years, I forget the exact number, compared to do the same thing, but you invested. And the number was so much larger in the long run. And that's why this could be a very costly mistake. If you're truly building your HSA for future long-term use, utilize the investment options, make the most of it. Understand the investment options. A lot of them have come a long way again in good low-cost options, but don't get trapped in some really expensive funds. Good thing is if you have an HSA custodian that is charging higher fees, pretty easy to move HSA money around. Just like an IRA, you can really move it around easily. So number 3, costly blunder. Don't forget about the investing part of your HSA, your health savings account. Number 4, missing out on the employer contribution. Free money alert, free money alert. This is one that we always look for. So when our clients send over their open enrollment packet, we'll look through things and we'll say, hey, you have a high deductible health plan. Fantastic. Here's your deductible. Here's your max out of pocket. To me, those are 2 very important numbers to comprehend, to understand what could be the worst health year. That max out of pocket, if it says $10,000, even with a horrible medical year, and again, I hope you never ever have to worry about that, the most you're paying out of pocket is $10,000. That's why we always say, here's deductible. This number is important because you're pretty much paying everything out of pocket up until this point. And then here's kind of that area where you're paying co-insurance, right? You're paying some, insurance is paying some, but then here's your tap out point, right? Your max out of pocket is that number. But in addition, the other one we like to throw in there is your employer putting any money into the HSA? And I can tell you this is getting very popular because employers also know that it's lower cost for them to offer high deductible health plans. So they also want you to choose this plan if it's appropriate for you, and to incentivize you, they're also then going to put in some money to that HSA. Sometimes they're putting enough in the HSA to cover a good chunk of that deductible too. So this number 4, not as costly as what our last one was, investing, right? This is the equivalent of like the 401k match when we say free money, right? That's what I want you to keep in mind here. So see if your employer is offering any type of contribution towards that HSA. And let me throw in a bonus point here. If you're watching this video as an entrepreneur, you're self-employed, right? And you're putting money into the HSA, don't forget to tell your accountant that you're using that HSA, because usually as a business owner, a 1099 employee, you're likely just going on to Fidelity's website, putting in, the $8,300 to the HSA. It's not showing up on your pay stub, right? You're probably not doing it through your pay stub, even if you're getting a pay stub. If you're an S corp, sure, you're going to walk through and have that all set up through your payroll. But if you're just going and rolling that through a lump sum, or even you can still have an S corp, but you're still just doing the HSA out of pocket, right? That's how we're set up. That's how WealthKill is set up. That 7,000 is now 8,300 number doesn't show up on that pay stub. So I need to tell my accountant every year that, hey, I also maxed out our family HSA for another $8,300. So if you're watching this and you're not, I say entrepreneurs, but really anyone, if you're not putting that money through your pay stub into the HSA, make sure you tell your accountant that, right? Because it doesn't show up anywhere else. Kind of one of those hidden tax documents that don't come out unless you tell your accountant you have it. So number 4 on the list, don't miss out on employer contributions to that HSA plan if the high deductible health plan makes sense for you. That's the key here. And last but not least, neglecting your HSA as a retirement tool. As many of you know, one of my favorite words in personal finance is the stealth IRA. And that comes from the HSA. After age 65, your HSA starts to act like an IRA. What do I mean by that? Well, remember, you put money in, pre-tax, right? Pre-tax deduction there. While it's in there, tax-deferred growth. And if you pull it out after age 65, you gotta pay ordinary income tax. What does that sound like? It sounds like an IRA, right? You're correct, but this is actually your HSA, right? It's a video about HSAs. So that's why we give it the name that stealth IRA. So after age 65, you can use it for anything. Now, ideally, we're putting this all away for no taxes, right? We want to use this for our healthcare costs. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, after age 65, remember our healthcare costs are probably going to, I don't want to say skyrocket, hopefully they don't skyrocket, will start to go up pretty consistently probably after age 65, hopefully later. But again, we know aging is going to catch up to us, right? And those healthcare costs are going to go up. So before you go and have like, I don't want to call it midlife, we'll call it late life crisis and buy the Ferrari from the HSA, just pump the brakes. You still had to pay taxes on it. Ideally, we're using it for medical expenses. And in that example, then we don't have to pay any taxes on it. So keep an eye on that. But number 5 on the list is don't forget that your HSA can be utilized as a retirement possibility tool after age 65. And there you have it. 5 costly blunders that could have a pretty large effect on your HSA. Some of those larger than others, while others maybe not so bad. You know, I keep going back to number 3. The investing one could be a major blunder in there. Go back to number 1, not knowing the HSA basics. That could become a problem, right? If you weren't actually eligible to save to an HSA, but then for the last 4 decades you put money into an HSA, that one could also be pretty darn costly in the long run. So all 5 of these are important things to keep an eye on, or really 4 common errors we see with HSAs. But as always, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with me for the last 15 minutes or so. If you have any topics you want to see, any questions you have, drop them in the comments below. We are now releasing new content on a weekly basis, and I love to build that content around you and the questions that you have. So send those over our way, drop those in the comments, and we'd love to build content around your specific questions. Also, good time to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to subscribe, click on the bell icon, get a notification every time we release a new video. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next video.